Let me describe your Thursday. You wake up, grab your phone, and before you even get out of bed, you've already tapped a food delivery app for breakfast. You commute, maybe you stop for coffee, 750s with tip. You barely register it. You work all day. You're busy, you're productive, you're capable. You stop somewhere on the way home because you're tired and you don't feel like cooking. And then you sit down, open your banking app for the first time in a week, and you just stare at it. The number doesn't make sense. You made a solid paycheck this week. You didn't buy anything big. You didn't go anywhere. And yet the number is somehow lower than it should be. Again. And here's what happens next. Because it happens every time. You close the app. You tell yourself you'll look at it more carefully this weekend. You don't look at it this weekend. The cycle restarts on Monday. Pause. Let this land before you continue. That is not a budgeting problem. That is not an income problem. That is a habits problem. And habits, unlike income, can change starting today. Today, we're going through the 7 specific habits that keep people financially stuck, not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but because these habits are deeply normal, widely modeled, and almost never identified for what they actually are. Automatic behaviors that quietly transfer your wealth to everyone else. And for every broke habit, we're going to talk about exactly what wealthy people do instead. My name is Katipo, and I spend a lot of time thinking about why the gap between people who build wealth and people who stay stuck financially is almost never about intelligence and almost never about income, and why it is almost always about a small set of specific, repeatable behaviors that compound over years in one direction or another. If you've ever felt like you're working hard but not getting ahead, like the money comes in and disappears before you understand where it went, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're building the complete picture. 7 habits, the psychology behind each one, the real dollar cost, and the exact replacement behavior that wealthy people practice instead. Let's go through them. Before we go deep, here's the full picture. What each habit costs annually, and what it costs your long-term wealth over 10 years. Look at that table. None of those habits feel dramatic. None of them feel like financial self-destruction in the moment. That's what makes them dangerous. They feel normal. They feel like everyone does this. And they do, which is exactly why most Americans retire with less than $100,000 saved. Let's go through each one. Habit 1: lifestyle spending on credit using debt to fund a life you haven't earned yet. This is the foundational broke habit. And I want to be precise about what I mean, because there's a version of credit use that is completely fine and a version that is financially catastrophic. Using a credit card for everyday purchases and paying the balance in full every month. Fine. You're getting rewards, you're building credit history, and you're paying 0 interest. Totally legitimate. Using a credit card for everyday purchases, carrying a balance, and making minimum payments. This is the habit. And it is quietly one of the most expensive things a person can do with their money. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent consumer credit data, the average American household carrying a credit card balance owes approximately $6,300. At the average credit card APR of 22%, that's $1,386 per year in interest, just to maintain the debt at its current level without paying it down. But here's what most people don't realize about minimum payments specifically. If you have $6,300 at 22% APR and you make only the minimum payment each month, typically 2% of the balance, here's what happens. Time to pay off. 31 years, total interest paid. $9,000 paid for $6,300 of purchases. $15,850. You paid $15,850 for $6,300 worth of stuff. That is the broke habit in its purest form. Not the spending, the carrying. The replacement habit. Treat your credit card like a debit card. Every purchase you make, subtract it from your mental or actual checking balance. If you can't pay it off at the end of the month, you can't afford it this month. Full stop. Habit 2, no budget, no tracking, flying financially blind every single month. Here's the thing about budgeting that most people get wrong. They hear budget and they think restriction. They think spreadsheets. They think Friday nights at home instead of out. They think deprivation. That is not what a budget is. A budget is simply a plan for where your money goes before it disappears. It's the difference between intentional spending and reactive spending, between knowing and guessing. And the evidence on what happens when people don't track their spending is stark. A study by the National Foundation for Credit Counseling found that 59% of Americans say they don't have a budget. And separately, a 2023 Quicken survey found that people who don't track spending consistently underestimate their monthly expenditures by 20 to 30%. $486 per month. That's nearly $500 to $800 per year in spending that people think isn't happening. Where does it go? Small purchases, recurring charges that auto-renew, impulse decisions that each feel inconsequential. The $14.99 here, the $23 there, the extra grocery run, the app you forgot you subscribed to. Individually, none of these are the problem. Collectively, without tracking, they consume the entire margin between your income and your financial goals. Here's what most people don't realize. Wealthy people don't budget because they're disciplined. They budget because they're strategic. They know that a dollar without a destination is a dollar that gets spent on nothing meaningful. The budget isn't a cage, it's a map. The replacement habit. Spend 10 minutes every Sunday looking at the past week's transactions. Not to judge, not to restrict, just to see. Awareness alone. The simple act of knowing where your money went changes behavior more reliably than any budgeting app or savings goal. Habit 3, confusing income with wealth. Thinking a good paycheck means you're building something. This one is subtle and it's important. And I think it might be the most psychologically damaging habit on this list because it creates a false sense of financial security that delays real action for years. Income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what flows in. Wealth is what stays. A surgeon earning $400,000 a year with $800,000 in debt, zero in investments, and a lifestyle that requires every dollar to maintain is not wealthy. They're high income. Those are different things. A teacher earning $58,000 a year with a paid-off car, $45,000 in index funds, a growing 401(a), and a $12,000 emergency fund is building wealth. Slowly, steadily, with a fraction of the surgeon's income. Wealth is measured by net worth, assets minus liabilities, not salary, not take-home pay. Not the car in your driveway or the neighborhood you live in, net worth. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, median net worth for Americans aged 35 to 44, people at or near peak earning years, is approximately $135 to $600. The mean is much higher because a small number of very wealthy households pull the average up. Most families in this age range have a net worth that would last them 2 to 3 years without income. The replacement habit. Calculate your net worth right now. It takes 10 minutes. Add up every asset you own, savings, investments, retirement accounts, home equity, car value. Subtract every liability, mortgage, car loan, student debt, credit card balances. That single number tells you more about your financial health than your salary ever will. Track it quarterly. Watch it grow. Let that number, not your paycheck notification, be the scoreboard that tells you how you're doing. Habit 4, avoiding investing, waiting to feel ready for the one thing time rewards most. Look, I hear some version of this constantly. I'll start investing when I have more money. I'll start when the market calms down. I'll start when I pay off this debt. I'll start next year when things settle. And I understand those instincts. They feel responsible. They feel like you're being careful. But here's the thing. The right time to start investing, feeling almost never arrives because there's always a reason to wait. And every reason to wait has a price tag attached to it that most people never calculate. Let me put the cost of waiting in terms that are impossible to ignore. That's not a hypothetical. That's just math. The person who starts at 30 and invests $400 until 65 ends up with approximately $798,000. The person who waits until 40 and invests the same $400 ends up with approximately $367,000. The 10-year delay cost, $431,000, from the same $400 per month. Now, you might be thinking, but Katipo, what if the market crashes right after I invest? And here's the honest answer. Over any 20-year period in the history of the U.S. stock market, diversified index fund investors have never lost money. Not once. Short-term, yes, the market goes down. Long-term, it has always recovered and reached new highs. The market crash risk is real but temporary. The delay risk is permanent. The replacement habit. Open a brokerage account or maximize your 401(k) contribution this week. Start with whatever you can afford. $50, $100, $200 per month. Set it to automatic. The amount matters less than starting. You can always increase it. You cannot go back in time. Habit 5, the perpetual car upgrade, funding a payment forever and calling it practical. Americans love cars. And I get it. A car is not just transportation. It's identity, it's comfort, it's a daily experience. I'm not going to tell you to drive a beater for the rest of your life, but I am going to show you what the perpetual upgrade cycle actually costs, because most people have never done this math and it is genuinely shocking. The broke habit isn't owning a nice car. The broke habit is always having a car payment. Leasing or financing a new or near new vehicle every 3 to 4 years, never reaching the point where the car is paid off and the payment disappears, or if it does disappear, immediately replacing it with a new one. The average new car payment in America right now is $737 per month, according to Edmunds' most recent auto financing report. That's for a new vehicle. Used vehicles average around $520 per month. Here's what most people don't realize. The person who pays off their car and keeps driving it for 3 to 4 additional years after payoff doesn't just save the payment. They create an investing window. $520 per month invested at 8% for 10 years, $95,000. That is what the perpetual upgrade cycle costs. Not in payments, but in the investment wealth that money could have built instead. The replacement habit. When your current car is paid off, do not go back to the dealership. Drive that car for at least 2, 3 more years. Every month, automatically invest the payment you used to make. You'll feel the difference in your investment account within 12 months. Habit 6, lifestyle inflation. On every raise, spending 100 cents of every new dollar before it can work for you. This is where it gets really interesting, because this habit is the one that catches the highest earners, not just people struggling to get by. People earning $90,000, $120,000, $150,000 a year who are still not building meaningful wealth because every income increase triggers an equal lifestyle upgrade. You got a raise, a real one. Your take home went up by $400 a month. And within 4 months, that $400 has been absorbed. A slightly nicer gym, an extra streaming service, dinners out a little more often, the apartment upgrade you told yourself you deserved. None of those decisions are wrong on their own. The problem is the pattern, that every dollar of income increase becomes a dollar of lifestyle increase, that the savings rate stays flat or declines even as income rises, that the gap between income and life cost never grows, no matter how much more you make. Research from the Bureau of Economic Analysis consistently shows that the U.S. personal savings rate, the percentage of disposable income that Americans save, hovers between 3.5% and 6% even as median household incomes have risen substantially over the past 30 years. People are earning more and saving the same percentage. The raises are being fully absorbed. The wealth gap in one line. The difference between someone who retires wealthy and someone who retires stressed is almost never income. It's the size of the gap between what they earn and what their life costs. A $70,000 earner saving 20% builds more long-term wealth than a $140,000 earner saving 5%. Every single time. The replacement habit, the 50-50 rule. Every raise, every bonus, every income increase, before you change a single spending behavior, commit 50% of the after-tax increase to investing. You still get to enjoy the raise. You just stop letting 100% of it evaporate into lifestyle expansion that you'll stop noticing within 6 months anyway. Habit 7, no written financial goals. Drifting financially instead of building deliberately. The last habit is the one that might sound the softest and has the most comprehensive impact on everything else on this list. People without written financial goals don't just miss goals. They don't have goals to miss. They have vague intentions. Save more, invest someday, get out of debt eventually, retire comfortably. These are wishes, not goals. And wishes don't have deadlines, dollar amounts, or action steps attached to them. Here's what most people don't realize. A goal that isn't written down isn't a goal, it's a thought. And thoughts evaporate under the daily pressure of life, impulse spending, and the thousand small decisions that financial life requires. Research from Dominican University of California found that people who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them than people who only thought about their goals. 42% from the act of writing. And financial goals specifically have an additional power. They create a reference point for every spending decision. When you have a written goal, I will have $25,000 invested by December 2026. Every discretionary spending choice gets evaluated against that goal. The $200 impulse purchase isn't just a $200 decision anymore. It's a decision in the context of where you're trying to go. The replacement habit. Write down one financial goal right now. Not a wish, a goal. Give it a specific dollar amount and a specific deadline. I will have $15,000 in my Roth IRA by December 31, 2026. I will pay off my $4,000 credit card balance by June 2026. I will invest $500 per month starting this Friday. One goal. Written, dated, with a specific number. That is the difference between a financial plan and a financial wish. O3, the habit replacement framework. Here's what I want you to understand about all 7 habits we just covered. They are not character flaws. They are not signs of irresponsibility. They are default behaviors, patterns that feel normal because they're common, that feel safe because everyone around you is doing the same thing. But common is not the same as right, and normal is not the same as optimal. Wealthy people are not doing dramatically different things. They are doing slightly different versions of the same things, consistently, deliberately, over time. That's it. They spend, but on their terms within a plan. They use credit, but pay it off. They upgrade their lifestyle, but not faster than they upgrade their savings rate. The core insight: deliver this slowly. The habits that build wealth are not harder than the habits that keep people broke. They are just different, and the difference is almost always a decision, not a circumstance. You are not broke because life dealt you a bad hand. You are broke to the extent that you are because of habits, and habits change. Look, I want to be honest with you about something. Changing a habit is not a single decision. It's a decision that gets made again and again, every time the old pattern tries to reassert itself. Every time the credit card is the easy option. Every time the new car looks good. Every time the raise hits and the upgrades feel deserved. The first decision is the most important one, but it's not the last one. What separates people who change their financial trajectory from people who watch the same content, nod along, and stay exactly where they are, is one thing: action before the motivation fades. The closing challenge: direct camera, deliberate pick one habit from this list. The one that hit closest to home, the one where you felt the most recognition. Just one. And do the replacement behavior before you go to bed tonight. Pay down a balance. Track this week's spending. Calculate your net worth. Open the brokerage account. Check the beneficiary. Write one financial goal, one action, tonight. That is the beginning of a completely different financial life. The gap between where you are financially and where you want to be is not as wide as it feels. It is 7 habits. 7 behaviors that can change, that have changed for millions of people who were exactly where you are, starting with one decision tonight. Call to action: like, subscribe, comment. Which of these 7 habits hits closest to home? Drop the number in the comments. I read everyone.